Hey guys, welcome back. Besiege early access coverage. This is episode 23. I'm Enigmius, and today we're adding the second wheel to the hamster wheel because it seemed like a good idea. Right now we can only go in one direction and we don't even have a lot of control over what direction that is. But if we add a second wheel and we allow both wheels to turn independently of one another, then we have the option to maybe do a little bit of turning. Maybe. That's a very key word these days whenever it comes to plans that we have for builds. I've got this sped up so it's twice the normal speed just because regular building speed is kind of unnecessary, and if we can cut out half the amount of time to watch it so that you can see it and get it done and get into your kind of environment and building, then that's fantastic. You save a little bit of time, and if you want to watch it slower you can pause it every couple seconds. It's entirely up to you. Now the main thing that I wanted to do here was build the circle, the base circle that we use as the template to do the two rings that comprise the wheel itself. It's really simple. You can find all kinds of guides online for how to draw voxel circles, and you'll find that after you've made a certain number of them, you don't even need the guides anymore, especially for smaller ones like this. It just kind of happens almost naturally, and it's a very easy, straightforward thing to do. There you can see I built it this time out of ballasts because that's what the final material is going to be. I originally built it out of wood and it was a little bit easier to see, but whatever works for you. You could build the whole thing out of wood and continue to use wood for the entire structure if you want. The one thing I wanted to point out is that we're going to be joining the two rings. You can see the beginning of that connection there with the large wheel and a large wheel on the other side, and also the central point for the second wheel is also going to be a wood block. So the benefit that we had in the previous episode is that the entire wheel was fireproof. There was nothing on the wheel that could burn. That changes with this, and if you want to change the central point for the second wheel to a ballast block, that would help if you wanted to retain the fireproofing. And you could also use something other than the large wheels for the connection between the two wheels if you wanted, with the understanding that if you use something like a cog or something that isn't as likely to burn, the issue that you have is you don't have as many connections that you can make in order to make the connection between the two wheels stronger. So it's just something to keep in mind. Ultimately, whatever works for you is the best way to do it. I just wanted to point that out as we're going along. Now you can see we've got the two rings, and then we just start connecting them with braces. Really, there's nothing at all complicated about this, but this is where it really starts to look round when we're just doing the single brace around the outside edge. And then of course we had to go and ruin it because we found out that if we were to just try and use this wheel as you see it now, it would kind of, as soon as you start the simulation, it would sort of squash onto itself, and then something would break and fly off, and then that would be the beginning of the end before you even got 3 or 4 seconds into the simulation. So that's something to keep in mind, is that we did have to brace it, and the braces made it look not as appealing, I felt, but it works a lot better, and that's ultimately it looks even less appealing when it's squished on the ground from its own weight. It couldn't support its own weight. And you can see I've added in an extra ballast block so that it makes sort of an X pattern, and that's just so that we have something to connect the central point to, and then also connect that ballast block to the 4 ballast blocks around it. So it's a pretty strong connection, and trying to avoid having too many braces in a position where they're going to be impacting other things like the ground, because we've kind of learned our lesson a little bit in the sense of, you know, braces don't always behave the way you might expect them to. So if we can limit the amount of contact they have with other things, that's good. So that's why we've got the braces kept to the inside when we're looking at joining the two rings together, and also around the outside edges instead of on the, you know, they're not in a position where they're going to be smashing into the ground or smashing into other things unless things go horribly wrong and the two wheels start smashing into one another, but that would indicate a failure anyway. So there's only so much you can do. And you can see most of the time spent building this is just doing repetitive things, you know, going around and connecting everything. And this is just the same as the bracing that I did on the other side, exactly the same as skipping one ballast block and going to the next one and then bracing the next ballast block to the 1-2 after that, and all the way around. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And then this is where things got a little weird. Not on this side, ironically, but on the other side. First of all, with the new camera controls, they're improved in a number of ways, but not. You can see that we're having to tilt a lot around, so I apologize for that. It's necessary. We don't have a button to elevate and lower the camera, so we kind of have to do a little bit of craziness with tilting and zooming to change our altitude. We get it all done, and we're basically building the counterweight arm that we have on the other side, and that would be the drive mechanism that actually makes the whole thing kind of work. In order to do that, we have a steering block that's attached to the central pivot point, and then we have a 1 block gap and a ballast, and we attach a steering block to that, and then we have the ballasts that actually comprise the end of the arm that are connected to the second steering block. And that way you can fold out the arm so that it's at full length, and then you can also rotate the arm so that ideally it's the weight of the arm that kind of pulls down on the wheel and makes it rotate. And then you use the central steering block, the first one that you placed for each wheel, to keep raising the arm so that it never actually gets a chance to touch the ground, and that keeps the wheel moving. Actually getting that to work is, well, it's a little bit of a balancing act, and then that's literally exactly what it is, because you have to get the right amount of weight in order to make the wheels tip and start to roll without having so much weight that the arms break. I mean, that's the whole thing that we're trying to achieve, and that basically boils up the sum total of the problem is having enough to make it go without having so much it breaks. It's kind of sums up the game in a lot of ways, I think. And now we're just quickly going around. We're reducing the weight of the individual ballast blocks to the minimum value. There's a lot of ballast blocks on this, and I would say if you were really, if you were to take on this project and you just wanted to have the bestest hamster wheel that was ever made, part of the tuning process would be going around and tuning the wheels to get them just the right weight so that they don't slip around and they don't misbehave, but they also aren't so heavy that the machine can't sustain them. For my purposes, I'm happy to just lower them all to the lowest possible weight and then go from there and tune what we can around them so that we don't have to go through the process of individually tuning each one of those ballast blocks all the way around. So that would be rather time consuming, even if you're using this method like I use, where I pull the window out of the way so that I can see what I'm working on, and then just use the cut and paste to cut from, set one ballast block, cut it, jump to the next ballast block, paste, all the way through. It doesn't really take that long, but tedious as hell. And then you have to test it and see if, that would take a very long time. But like I say, if you're really into it, that's kind of the thing. Now, you can see I had those wooden blocks that were kind of connecting all the way to the central block of the second wheel. And then I pulled them out and then attached another large wheel to that other side. So now we've got two large wheels. And the goal here is to connect them in a way that gives us, again, a little bit of freedom of movement so that things don't just shear apart because there's so much force, being applied to this central area. But at the same time, not allowing so much movement that becomes a problem in of itself. Like there's a balance to be had, again, between giving it a little bit of play so that everything has a chance to kind of adjust to what's going on around it without so much play that it basically falls apart. Now, I took a little bit of fiddling to get this set up the way that I kind of was comfortable with, in the sense that everything was kind of balanced and made sense to me, and looking at it, it seemed like it was going to be the solution that I was looking for. And then the main thing is, with the contractible springs, in order to work for something like that, you have to go in and you have to max out the setting for their, I don't even remember what it's called now. It's the only slider that you have access to for the contracting springs, is there's elasticity beyond bounds. So when they pull apart, how much elasticity is pulling them back is basically what it amounts to. And you want that the highest possible, and that's what kind of keeps everything together. The sliders there are just to allow controlled movement side to side. It's the springs themselves that are actually keeping everything together and keeping things from pulling apart too easily, but still allowing a little bit of flexibility for things to move around. Now, with all this done, we're almost to the point where we can start testing it. So you can see here we have the two arms on either side, and we extend them so now both arms are at full length. Not quite enough weight, you can see. Like, it should be rolling forward, but it's not. And then we start That's the problem. We start, just moving them around a little bit, seeing if we can get just enough momentum. We can change the weight of the ballast blocks on the end of the arms. There's 3 of them there. We can also add more ballast blocks if we need more weight. Like, that's something that you can easily adjust. And then I found that by just keep pushing the arms down into the ground, it kind of has the same effect as letting the weight pull the wheel down to cause it to roll. It's a little bit more controlled, and I feel like it's a little bit more cheaty. It's not quite with the spirit of what we're trying to do, but it works. And then we start to see that one of the things that we're having trouble with is keeping both wheels together. So there's an opportunity there to strengthen the connection in the middle. It's not bad. You can see there, it was the second wheel that pulled itself apart before the whole central connection did, but it's still kind of problematic. The other problem that we'll have, and I'll just let you watch the rest of the testing that I did with this as far as it goes, is it's always that left arm that falls off. Every time we test it, if an arm falls off, it's always the left arm, and it fell off a lot. So that was one of the things that you would have to look at as well if you wanted to actually make this thing work for you, is to make the connection stronger and recognize, I feel like it's a bit of a bug, it's a bit of an inconsistency with the game when 2 things are set up exactly the same on both sides and one of them is constantly failing. There's a thing at play, and I don't really know what it is. What I think it might be is I actually have a brace stuck in that origin block, and I can't get it out because the only thing that the mouse will touch is the outer edges of the brace, and you actually have to touch the span between the little knobs on the end of the braces in order to, target it, so to speak, and remove it. So I can't help but think that maybe that's kind of the problem. But in order to fix it would require rebuilding the entire thing, and that's a big project. So there's some opportunities to correct things. You'll also notice that I added a bunch of the high friction pads onto the ballast blocks. Not all of the ballast blocks, but most of them. You can see we're adding some more here, so that we get a little bit less slippage as the wheels are spinning around. We get a little bit more travel instead of just watching the wheels spin in place. I'm happy with it as a concept, something that I can work on, mess around with as I get new ideas, tweak things when I have the inclination, probably rebuild to get around the issue with the origin block and the brace, just to see if that is the issue. But also, I'm going to put it up on the download site for you guys if you want to have, basically it's 95% done except for the tweaking that you would do to try and get it to work better, and then do whatever you want to weaponize it, or if you want to add mods to your game and do things that can make it work differently with mods, that's cool too. Once you download it, it's yours to mess around with. But as far as this goes, we're going to be moving on to the next project for the next Besiege video, whenever that happens to be. If you want to be notified when I add that video, you can always subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on social media. Links for that are always in the information section below the video. Please leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.